Once upon a time, in a deep ancient forest untouched by axe or plow, the sun rose as dew dripped from tree branches. The forest woke gently each morning, birds singing the world awake. Two children, Hansel and Gretel, walked along a narrow trail, with baskets hanging from their small hands. Hansel, the older brother, wore a blue tunic patched at the elbows. He was brave and impulsive, but his heart was pure, always leaping to protect his sister. Gretel, younger by 2 years, wore a faded yellow dress and a necklace of carved wooden beads. She was cautious, always scanning the shadows. Gretel was quiet and wise beyond her years, and carried within her a deep kindness for all living creatures. "Look, Gretel," Hansel whispered, pointing to a blackberry bush. "We'll fill our baskets in no time. We shouldn't go too far from the path," Gretel replied softly. She loved her brother's fearlessness, but danger lurked beyond the safe trails. The morning passed quickly as they gathered berries until their baskets overflowed. As noon approached, their stomachs rumbled with hunger. The forest breeze carried a scent of roasted apples, honey cakes, and warm caramel syrup. The smell drifted through the trees and into the two kids' nostrils. They followed the delicious scent through winding trails that twisted between stones and fallen trees. The forest grew darker as they walked in deeper. Spruce trees and tall firs blocked out the sun. Gretel's heart started to feel unease as every whisper of wind became a warning. Finally, they found a small clearing. In its center sat the house. It was a shabby, crooked cabin built from dark logs blackened with sap and smoke. Moss covered the roof, and the window shutters were cracked with age. The house looked as though it had grown from the forest itself. A thin curl of gray smoke arose from the crooked stone chimney, then mixing with the low clouds above. Strange chimes made of bones and hollow reeds hung from the eaves, clinking softly in the breeze with a music that sent a cold shiver down Gretel's spine. Hansel stepped forward. He felt only the warmth and comfort radiating from the little home, thinking of roasted apples, warm milk, and sweet caramel syrup drizzled over hot cakes. His mouth watered as he imagined sinking his teeth into something that would fill the aching hollowness in his belly. But Gretel hesitated at the clearing's edge. Her eyes caught the glint of tiny skulls strung along the window ledges. At first, she thought them to be carved from wood or bone, but when she looked closer, she saw hair still clinging to cracked scalps and empty eye sockets staring blindly at the forest. Her skin prickled with dread. "Hansel," she whispered urgently, "let's go back, please." He turned to her with a gentle smile, trying to reassure his sister. "Don't be scared, Gretel. Whoever lives here must be kind if they bake such sweet-smelling food." But as he walked toward the heavy oak door, Gretel saw shadows moving behind the window panes. Hansel looked behind him at Gretel, then knocked firmly. The sound echoed and shook the small house as dust flew off the door. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came a heavy scraping noise, like claws dragging along wooden beams, followed by the slow creak of the door opening. In the doorway loomed Mama Bear. Her body filled the door frame, blocking all sight of the room beyond. Her thick fur was matted in places where old blood clotted in coarse knots. She wore a woven shawl that draped over her massive shoulders and pinned at the breast with a charm carved from what looked like polished human jawbone. Around her neck hung dozens of tiny bones on leather cords, clinking as she moved. Her muzzle was wet and twitching as she sniffed the children's scent. "Oh, sweet children," she rumbled, her voice thick and deep. Come in, my dears. You look so thin, so tired, so very hungry." Her lips curled back into a smile that revealed long yellow fangs streaked with old plaque and bits of meat. Her wide tongue stuck out as she tasted the cold air around Hansel's face. The smell of her breath was a disgusting sour mix of rotting meat, old blood, and half-digested sweet porridge. Hansel felt only relief and hunger. "Thank you, ma'am," he said shyly, bowing his head as he stepped forward. Gretel did not feel the same as her brother. She felt sheer terror. The floorboards under her feet seemed to tremble as she followed her brother inside. As the door closed with a heavy thud behind them, the last light of the forest vanished. The room was dim, lit only by the flickering glow of a fire smoldering in a blackened hearth. Thick smoke curled upward to disappear into the dark shelves that were stacked with dusty bottles containing floating animal eyes, shriveled herbs, blood-blackened feathers, and cloudy oils. Hanging from nails driven into the ceiling beams were charms made of bone shards and carved wooden faces that seemed to watch the children's every move. In one corner sat a small altar covered in melted candle stubs and broken bird skulls arranged in strange swirling patterns. Papa Bear sat silently by a table, sharpening a massive iron axe. The muscles in his thick arms moved back and forth with the axe with mindless obedience. He did not look up as the children entered. Baby Bear rocked on his haunches near the hearth, playing with a crude rag doll stuffed with dried mushrooms. In the firelight, Gretel saw that the doll's hair was woven from pale, brittle human strands. The realization made her blood run cold. Mama Bear moved heavily toward the children, each step shaking the creaking planks. Her claws clicked against the floor as she gestured toward a small rough-hewn table set with 2 clay bowls. "Sit, eat, fill your bellies, sweet children. You will need your strength." Hansel obeyed at once, sitting down and eagerly scooping steaming porridge into his mouth. It smelled of yummy cream and honey. Each mouthful sent warmth through his cold bones. Gretel picked up her spoon with trembling fingers. She watched Mama Bear. The old witch bear stood in the shadows as she watched them eat. Drool dripped onto the dirt floor as her long tongue slid across her teeth. Gretel's eyes stung with tears as she forced herself to swallow each sweet mouthful of porridge. But deep within her, a cold certainty settled. They had already crossed a line they could never return from. Hansel finished his bowl with a satisfied sigh, licking the last traces of porridge from his spoon. His belly felt warm and heavy as relaxed back into his chair. "Thank you, ma'am," he said softly, rubbing his full stomach. For a moment, he saw her smile down at him with what he thought was kindness. Beside him, Gretel ate with trembling hands. Each spoonful felt like swallowing poison. She felt sick. As she lowered her spoon into the half-empty bowl, a single tear slipped down her cheek. Mama Bear's deep rumbling voice filled the silent room. "You've eaten well," she purred. "Now it is my turn."
Before Gretel could react, Mama Bear's massive claw wrapped around her narrow waist. Mama Bear's rough fur scratched Gretel's skin through her thin dress, exposing Gretel's small pink underwear as her paw lifted the little girl into the air. Gretel screamed as her dress exposed her belly button. The scream cut through Hansel's sleepy haze. His eyes widened in horror as he saw Mama Bear's jaws opening wide below his sister's dangling feet. Mama Bear's muzzle stretched open to reveal curved yellow fangs as her tongue rolled out, dripping with saliva. The heat rising from her gaping throat hit Gretel like a blazing oven that burned her nostrils. Gretel thrashed, kicking her legs and sobbing. Her eyes locked onto Hansel's face below, seeing his mouth open in a silent scream as tears flooded his wide eyes. "Mama Bear, no. Please don't hurt her," Hansel shouted. But Mama Bear heard nothing beyond the thunderous rush of her own hunger. Her heart pounded with greedy joy. She had tasted many humans over her life, but children were always the sweetest. Their flesh was so tender and their terror made them even more delicious. She lowered Gretel slowly until the girl's bare feet touched her tongue. Gretel sobbed louder as Mama Bear's jaws closed over her knees, her curved fangs scraping shallow cuts down her calves. Mama Bear took a breath, inhaling the scent of Gretel's fear. Hansel stumbled backward. All he could see was his little sister, her eyes locked onto his, before Gretel's legs disappeared into Mama Bear's throat. Gretel felt Mama Bear's throat contracting around her calves, pulling her body in deeper with force. She swallowed again. Gretel's hips slipped past her lips. Her teeth scraped Gretel's back, cutting through her dress and leaving shallow bleeding lines. Inside Mama Bear, Gretel felt herself pushed relentlessly downward. Each swallow forced her arms tight against her sides while Mama Bear's stomach massaged her downward. She fell into the bear's stomach with a big wet splash. Acid burned her legs. She screamed in agony as the blistering fluid soaked through her dress, biting into her skin with searing pain, as her perky nipples gently poked through the wet outline of her dress. The air was suffocating. Acrid bile burned her lungs with every inhale. Mama Bear let out a deep rumbling moan of satisfaction as she licked her lips. She then turned her eyes toward Hansel. Now, the brave one. Hansel stumbled backward as he ran for the door, but Papa Bear rose up, blocking his path with his towering bulk. He reached out his arm and grabbed Hansel by the tunic. Baby Bear giggled softly, tugging at Hansel's leg as if playing a cruel game. Mama Bear reached down and wrapped her massive claws around Hansel's chest. Hansel tried punching at her, but his small fists made no impact on her. She lifted him effortlessly into the air as her tongue curled out. Hansel could feel the burn of the acidic saliva through his tunic. His feet kicked as she lowered him headfirst into her maw. Darkness swallowed him. Hansel's legs slid past her lips. Her fangs scraped his thighs, drawing lines of blood that her tongue licked clean in a single stroke. His world became nothing. He could hear the echo of his sister's sobs from afar. Hansel landed atop his sister with a splash of scalding acid. Gretel cried out in pain as the stomach walls pressed them together. They clung to each other, sobbing in the darkness. Above them, Mama Bear groaned in bliss. She pressed her claws to her swollen belly, feeling the faint wriggling within. Her big tummy began its slow devouring work, filling her with primal satisfaction. She licked her lips, savoring the last drops of blood and tears clinging to her fangs. Closing her eyes, she settled back onto her haunches, her stomach bulging and twitching with her writhing meals. "It hurts, Hansel, it hurts so much," Gretel sobbed. Hansel pressed his arms around her trembling body. His own skin burned. The pain made his vision swim with black spots even though there was no light. "I'm sorry, Gretel. I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. His bravery had always guided him, but now it had failed them both, and his heart broke with guilt as her small body shook in agony against him. Despite her agony, Gretel pressed her forehead to Hansel's cheek, whispering through her tears. "We have to think, there must be a way out, we always find a way out." Her voice trembled with fear, but deep inside, her mind worked desperately to find any solution. Her cautious, observant nature scanned every sensation. She observed the way the stomach walls pulsed, the flow of the acid, the location of the muscular entrance above. Hansel wept silently, holding Gretel close. His bravery felt like a joke. All he could hear was his sister's weak sobbing and the endless growling churn of the bear's stomach that held them. Meanwhile, Mama Bear could feel the children's squirms. Their struggles massaged her stomach walls in a way that sent shivers of orgasmic pleasure through her body. The feeling of their tiny forms writhing inside of her filled her with deep, sensual satisfaction. Her eyes fluttered shut as she felt an orgasm through her gut. Such sweet little morsels, she thought, licking her dripping fangs with a long, slow stroke of her rough black tongue. Far, far away, the forest lay in gentle afternoon quietude. Sunlight streamed through beautiful emerald leaves. Birds chirped softly, and buzzing bees drifted lazily from flower to flower. Along this path skipped Goldilocks, her golden curls catching the sunlight as they bounced happily with her bobbing head. Her blue linen dress swished back and forth around her legs. A woven basket swung in her hand, filled with mint sprigs, wild thyme, and delicate pink foxgloves she had gathered in the meadow. Goldilocks was known throughout the woodland hamlets as bold, curious, and clever. Though young, her wit was quick and sharp as a needle. She prided herself on never being fooled, outwitted, or caught unprepared. As she happily skipped along, she hummed a soft tune, her heart light with the expectation of warm honey and thick cream from the bear family she often visited. She remembered their porridge fondly, and Mama Bear's great looming frame had never frightened her before. In truth, Goldilocks found her presence comforting. But as she neared the hidden clearing, her footsteps slowed. Her clever mind sharpened instantly. Something is wrong, she thought, her stomach tightening. She crouched low, creeping between thorn bushes until she reached the edge of the clearing. There, her sharp eyes scanned every detail with precise focus. Goosebumps prickled down Goldilocks' arms. She smelled the scent of blood, sour bile, and something sickly sweet drifting from the open windows. Quietly, she approached the crooked door and peered inside. Her breath caught in her throat. Papa Bear sat in his corner, polishing a massive iron axe. His golden-brown fur was smeared with fresh blood. Baby Bear rocked by the hearth, humming to himself as he plucked at his rag doll's human hair. In the dim light of the fire stood Mama Bear. Her belly was swollen and round, bulging outward in twitching shapes that moved around beneath her fur. Goldilocks saw the faint imprint of a tiny hand press outward against Mama Bear's fur before vanishing back into its scalding depths. Goldilocks could hear a muffled scream echoed from within Mama Bear's gut. Goldilocks clapped a hand over her mouth to stop her own gasp. Gathering her courage, she stepped toward the big bear. "Mama Bear, what have you done?" Goldilocks demanded. Mama Bear turned her head slowly. "They're right here, my clever girl," she rumbled. She lifted a massive paw and patted her bloated belly. Before Goldilocks could respond, Papa Bear lumbered forward, his claw gripped Goldilocks' wrists. His grip was so strong her bones ached. She twisted and kicked, but he did not react. Papa Bear dragged her forward like a rag doll. "No!" Goldilocks screamed. "Let me go!" Baby Bear laughed as he shuffled forward with his rag doll tucked under his arm. He reached down and grabbed Goldilocks' ankle, tugging at her dress. Mama Bear opened her jaws and smiled. Mama Bear lunged forward with shocking speed. Her jaws closed around Goldilocks' head and shoulders. Mama Bear moaned low and deep, her eyes rolling back in bliss as she felt Goldilocks' body sliding into her mouth. The clever girl tasted of sweet mint and forest flowers, a fresh and bright flavor that mixed deliciously with the salty sweat of her terror. The old witch bear paused for a moment, savoring the feeling of the girl's feet drumming against her fangs before closing her jaws around Goldilocks' ankles. With a final slow, luxurious swallow, she pulled the last of the clever girl into her belly. Hansel and Gretel clung to each other with their eyes wide, as Goldilocks fell in beside them with a wet splash that burned their blistered skin anew. "Goldilocks," Gretel sobbed, pressing her burned cheek against Goldilocks' arm. Hansel gasped in terror. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" Goldilocks clenched her teeth against the rising pain, forcing her sharp mind to focus despite the pain she felt. "No," she fiercely whispered through clenched teeth. "Not if I can help it." Think, think, think. Her sharp mind flickered through memories as quickly as lightning. There was the time she escaped the fox trap by untying the snare from beneath the buried branch. Then there was the time she outwitted the wolves by using a broken lantern to blind them before fleeing through the thorns. And of course there was that one time she learned bear anatomy from an old hunting scroll in her father's cabin. She had studied the stomach, the throat, the vulnerable gaps between heart and lung, the bile ducts leading to the intestines. She learned it all. Goldilocks had a plan. She whispered to her new friends. "Hansel, Gretel, listen to me. When I say push, you push as hard as you can. Understand?" "Push? Push what?" Hansel gasped. "The stomach wall," Goldilocks hissed. "We need to make her gag. Make her throw us up. It's our only chance." But she'll just swallow us again," Gretel cried. "Not if we run fast enough." Goldilocks spoke with determination. "Not if we blind her first." Goldilocks reached into the folds of her torn dress and found her secret tool. A small round glass vial filled with foxglove oil she had gathered earlier in the meadow. The cork was sealed with wax, but the acid had eaten away part of the waxy layer. She dug her nails into the softened seal and wrenched the cork free. The scent of crushed foxglove was bitter, toxic, almost metallic. All that and mixed with the reeking rot of Mama Bear's stomach. Goldilocks raised the vial above her head, feeling the stomach muscles contracting around her arm, trying to force it down. She shouted, her voice echoing in the sweltering darkness. "Now, push." Hansel and Gretel braced their burned feet against the slippery folds of stomach flesh and pushed with all their strength. Goldilocks did the same. The stomach flexed in violent spasms as Mama Bear groaned in confusion. The three small bodies wriggled painfully within her gut, and the sudden bitter scent of foxglove oil burned its way up her throat. Mama Bear's eyes flew open. She felt her stomach churn violently, a sickly sour burn rising in her gullet. Her thick tongue lolled from her mouth as bile flooded her throat. She gagged once, twice, the retching so powerful her ribs heaved under her matted fur. With a wet, deafening roar, she vomited. Goldilocks felt the stomach convulse around her, squeezing all three children upward in a single explosive surge. The tight throat muscles clamped around them one after the other, dragging them upward through the slick, suffocating tunnel of her throat. Hansel screamed as the crushing throat walls squeezed his burned arms tight against his chest. Gretel choked on thick ropes of mucus that filled her mouth and nose as she slid upward. Goldilocks clenched her jaw, holding the vial of foxglove oil tightly as they were propelled back into Mama Bear's mouth. They burst from her jaws in a choking flood of bile, acid, half-digested food, and blood. They landed on the filthy wooden floor in a steaming puddle of vomit, gasping and sobbing with relief and pain. Mama Bear staggered backward, hacking and retching, her jaws still dripping acid-stained slime. Her eyes burned with fury as she glared at the trembling children. Goldilocks acted instantly. She raised the vial of foxglove oil and hurled it into Mama Bear's gaping mouth. The glass shattered on her fangs. Bitter toxic oil splashed across her tongue and down her throat. Mama Bear roared in agony, clawing at her muzzle as the poison burned through her insides. Her humongous body crashing into shelves of jars and bone charms that shattered around her feet. Her furious scream shook the cabin walls as her massive paws scrabbled at her chest. The foxglove oil raced through her blood, seizing her heart in a sudden paralyzing grip. Her pupils dilated as her eyes rolled back into her skull. With one final gurgling gasp, Mama Bear fell onto her side. The floor shook under her weight as her claws twitched and her heavy jaws sagged open, dripping frothing saliva onto the scattered remains of her grim pantry. Hansel and Gretel sobbed with relief, clinging to Goldilocks' trembling legs as she stood over the witch bear's corpse. Goldilocks wiped vomit and mucus from her eyes with a shaking hand. Her clever mind burned with triumphant fury. "Come on," she whispered hoarsely. "Let's go home." Together, the three children stumbled out of the ruined cabin. Behind them, the witch bear's corpse lay silent and still. Gretel's bare feet slipped on the dew-wet grass. Her dress hung in shreds around her blistered legs, and her arms were raw with red burns from Mama Bear's stomach acid. Her pink underwear torn to shreds barely covering her private parts. Each step sent sharp pains through her body, but she still felt relief. She gripped Hansel's hand tightly, never letting go. Hansel stumbled beside her, his tunic eaten away to reveal angry red welts across his chest and belly. His blonde hair clung to his forehead in sticky tangles, sour with vomit and acid. But he held his chin high despite his trembling legs. Each footstep was driven by fierce determination to leave that nightmare behind forever. Goldilocks walked ahead of them, barefoot, burned, her golden curls clumped with slime and foxglove oil. Every step sent shooting pain up her scorched girly thighs, but her fierce blue eyes were fixed forward. She limped, clutching her side where Mama Bear's teeth had scraped her ribs. They walked in silence for a long while, the only sounds their tired breaths, and the soft drip of acid-drenched rags trailing from their clothes could be heard. Finally, Hansel spoke. I thought we were going to die in there." Gretel turned her head, pressing her cracked lips to his ear. "Me too, but Goldilocks saved us." Goldilocks didn't turn. Her gaze was locked ahead, scanning the trail for danger. "I didn't save you," she rasped hoarsely. "You saved yourselves. You listened. You pushed. You didn't give up even when it burned." Hansel and Gretel exchanged silent glances. At last they broke through the thick forest edge into open meadow. In the distance lay the village, with tiny smoke curls rising from thatched rooftops. Beyond it stood the old stone church. The smell of baking bread and fresh milk drifted across the meadow, so sweet it brought tears to their eyes. They limped forward. Villagers gathering morning water looked up and gasped at the sight of them. Mothers dropped their baskets and ran forward with cries of relief and horror, gathering the burned trembling children into protective arms. Fathers stepped back, their eyes wide with disbelief. Goldilocks stood in the center of the gathering crowd. Her voice was quiet but strong as she told them what had happened. How Mama Bear, the witch bear, lured Hansel and Gretel with her sweet-smelling porridge. How she swallowed them whole and planned to digest them alive. How Goldilocks arrived, and used her sharp mind to poison the bear from within and save them all. As she spoke, Hansel and Gretel stood behind her, tearing up as their hearts overflowed with gratitude and grief. The villagers listened in stunned silence and awe. When Goldilocks finished, an old man walked to the front of the crowd. "You are brave beyond measure, child," he whispered, bowing his head before her. "You are wiser than any hunter or elder among us." That afternoon, the hunters gathered with torch and axe. They returned to the clearing, tore down the dark cabin, burned the bone charms, and cast Mama Bear's rotting corpse into a deep pit lined with bitter herbs to keep her foul spirit from rising again. Goldilocks stood beside Hansel and Gretel at the edge of the clearing, clutching their hands. They watched the dark witch's house burn to cinders, the rising embers drifting into the blue afternoon sky like dying fireflies. Hansel and Gretel recovered under Goldilocks' watchful care. She visited them each morning, sitting by their bedsides. They found peace in their shared truth. That no darkness could ever swallow them again. Not while they had each other. Once upon a time, there were two brave children and a clever girl who escaped the stomach of a witch bear and destroyed her evil forever. And they lived happily ever after. Oh wait, whatever happened to Papa Bear and Baby Bear? After Mama Bear keeled over from the foxglove oil and was buried, Papa Bear scratched his belly thoughtfully. "Well, there goes dinner." Papa Bear sighed, staring off into the forest. "What are we gonna do now?" Baby Bear's ears perked up. "We could become vegan." Papa Bear frowned, his brow wrinkling so deeply it almost folded over his eyes. Vegan? Not a chance. Papa Bear said as he scooped up a squirrel running by and chucked it into his mouth. And so Papa Bear and Baby Bear also lived happily ever after. The end.